Emily Carter sat in the passenger seat of her sister's car, staring at the glass doors of the Wallace Women's Health Center. The golden lettering of the clinic's name shimmered under the afternoon sun, but all she could see was another inevitable disappointment. "This is ridiculous," Emily muttered, gripping the seatbelt across her chest. "I don't need another doctor telling me they don't know what's wrong with me." Sarah, her older sister, tightened her hands around the steering wheel. "And what if this one is different?" she challenged. Emily scoffed. "Different? How could he be?" She had spent years bouncing from one specialist to another, each visit ending with the same frustrating conclusion. "We don't know what's causing your pain." She was tired, exhausted, and more than anything, she was losing hope. "He only takes cases other doctors have given up on," Sarah continued. "I read that he personally chooses who he treats." Emily sighed. That wasn't exactly comforting. If this Dr. Ethan Wallace, some young, overachieving millionaire who could afford to be selective, decided she wasn't worth his time, then what? "You promised you'd try," Sarah reminded her, voice softer now. Emily exhaled slowly, staring at her reflection in the car window. Dark circles framed her weary eyes, a reflection of years spent battling an invisible enemy. Maybe this was her last chance. With a reluctant nod, she unbuckled her seatbelt and reached for the door handle. The moment she stepped out, the crisp autumn air brushed against her skin, carrying with it the weight of uncertainty. One more time. One last time. She took a deep breath and walked toward the entrance. The clinic's interior was nothing like the sterile, impersonal medical offices Emily had visited before. Instead of harsh fluorescent lights and the scent of antiseptic, the space was warm, soft lighting, earthy tones, and the faint aroma of lavender in the air. She approached the front desk, where a receptionist greeted her with a genuine smile. "Emily Carter?" Emily nodded, tightening her grip on the strap of her purse. "Dr. Wallace will see you shortly. Please, make yourself comfortable." Comfortable. Right. She chose a seat near the window, her fingers drumming against her thigh as she took in her surroundings. A few other women sat nearby, flipping through magazines or scrolling on their phones, all seemingly at ease. Why couldn't she feel that way? Her gaze shifted to a framed article on the wall. Dr. Ethan Wallace, the heir who chose to heal. She'd heard the rumors. The only son of a powerful real estate mogul, Ethan had inherited a fortune he never used. Instead of following in his father's footsteps, he had pursued medicine, more specifically, gynecology of all things. A billionaire with a mission. She wasn't sure whether that made him noble or just another privileged man playing savior. Before she could think too much about it, a door opened and a nurse stepped out. "Emily Carter?" Emily's stomach twisted. "Here we go." She followed the nurse down a quiet hallway to an office, where a tall man stood reviewing a file. He looked younger than she expected. Early 30s, maybe. His dark brown hair was slightly tousled, his features sharp yet approachable. But it was his eyes that unsettled her. Deep, focused, and entirely unreadable. He glanced up, his expression unreadable. "Emily Carter?" She swallowed hard. "Yes." "Dr. Ethan Wallace," he said, extending a hand. "It's nice to meet you." She hesitated for a fraction of a second before shaking it, surprised by the warmth of his touch. "Come in," he said, gesturing toward the chair across from his desk. "Let's talk." Emily exhaled slowly, stepping inside. It was too late to turn back now. Emily sat stiffly in the chair across from Dr. Wallace's desk, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The room was quiet except for the faint ticking of a minimalist wall clock. Ethan skimmed through her file, his expression thoughtful. "You've been experiencing chronic pelvic pain for 6 years?" 7, she corrected, her voice tight. He nodded. You've seen at least 5 specialists, undergone exploratory surgery, hormone therapy, physical therapy. His voice trailed off as he turned a page. No definitive diagnosis. Emily clenched her jaw. She'd lived this story 100 times before. Doctors flipping through her records, asking the same questions, reaching the same dead ends. She braced herself for the usual, "I'm sorry, but there's nothing more we can do." Instead, Ethan leaned forward slightly. "Tell me about the pain. When did it start?" Emily hesitated. Most doctors didn't ask her that. Not really. They read the reports, made assumptions, and moved on. But Ethan was watching her closely, as if her answer actually mattered. She took a breath. "I was 21. It started as dull cramps that wouldn't go away. Then it got worse, sharp, stabbing, like something was twisting inside me. Some days it's tolerable, others, it's unbearable." He nodded, jotting something down. "And what about triggers, stress, certain foods, physical activity?" Emily shook her head. "I've tried tracking it. There's no pattern. It just happens." Ethan was quiet for a moment, then closed the file and set it aside. "I don't just rely on paperwork, Emily. I want to hear from you." Something about the way he said it caught her off guard. She wasn't used to doctors actually listening. Still, doubt crept in. "And if you don't find anything either?" Ethan held her gaze. "Then we keep looking." She blinked. No doctor had ever said that before. A soft knock at the door interrupted them, and a nurse peeked inside. "Dr. Wallace, your next patient is running late. Would you like me to extend this appointment?" Ethan glanced at Emily. "If you don't mind staying a little longer, I'd like to take this time to run a few preliminary tests." Emily hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Okay." For the first time in years, a flicker of something unfamiliar sparked inside her. Hope. The exam room was colder than Emily expected. She sat on the padded table, the crinkling paper beneath her a familiar yet unwelcome sensation. Ethan moved methodically, his tone calm and professional as he explained each step. "I'm going to check for any tenderness around your lower abdomen. Let me know if anything hurts." She nodded, pressing her lips together as his hands applied gentle pressure. She flinched slightly when he reached a spot near her right hip. "There?" he asked. Emily swallowed. "Yeah." He continued the exam with careful precision, but she couldn't ignore the way her nerves tightened. Every other doctor had been clinical, detached, even impatient. But Ethan was different. His touch was measured, almost cautious, as if he understood that this was more than just a medical procedure for her. She turned her head slightly and noticed something she hadn't before: a small, faded scar on the inside of his wrist, a thin white line, barely visible under the harsh fluorescent light. Before she could stop herself, she spoke. "How did you get that?" Ethan stilled for a moment, then glanced at his wrist. For the first time since she met him, something in his expression shifted. A crack in the polished professionalism. "A long time ago," he said quietly. "It doesn't matter." But it did. She could feel it. He returned to the exam, but the moment lingered between them, heavy and unspoken. A part of her wanted to let it go. Another part, one she wasn't used to listening to, wanted to ask more. Instead, she stayed silent, letting the moment pass, because she wasn't sure she was ready for whatever answer he wasn't giving her. Emily dressed quickly after the exam, rubbing her arms as she tried to shake the lingering chill. When she stepped back into Ethan's office, he was already seated at his desk, reviewing his notes. She sat across from him, unsure what to expect. "Well?" she asked, bracing herself. Ethan set his pen down. "There are a few things that concern me. the location of your pain, the lack of response to previous treatments. I have a few theories, but I'll need more tests to be sure." Emily let out a short, bitter laugh. "So, in other words, you don't know." "I don't know yet," Ethan corrected, his voice steady. She shook her head. "You sound so sure of yourself." "Because I am," he said simply. "I don't take cases unless I believe I can help." Emily studied him carefully. His confidence wasn't arrogance. It was something else, something deeper. She hesitated before speaking. "Is that why you became a doctor?" Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. "One of the reasons." There it was again, that shift in his demeanor, like there was something pulling at him beneath the surface. Emily debated for a moment, then gestured toward his wrist. "Does it have anything to do with that scar?" For a second, she thought he might brush her off. But then, to her surprise, he leaned back in his chair, exhaling through his nose. "I had a sister," he said finally. "Her name was Lily." Emily's breath caught. She was sick for years. Different symptoms, different doctors. No one could figure out what was wrong until it was too late. His voice remained even, but there was an unmistakable weight behind it. "I was in med school when she died." Emily swallowed hard. "I'm sorry." Ethan nodded slightly. "She's the reason I do this, the reason I fight for cases like yours." A lump formed in Emily's throat. She'd spent years feeling invisible, unheard. And yet, here was someone who understood what it was like to watch a life slip through the cracks of an imperfect system. For the first time since she'd walked into his office, she felt something other than skepticism. She felt seen. Silence settled between them, heavy yet not uncomfortable. Ethan's confession hung in the air, and for the first time, Emily wasn't sure what to say. She had spent years believing no one understood what it felt like. To be dismissed, to be told her pain wasn't real simply because no one could find the cause. But here was a man who had lived through it in a different way, who had lost someone because of it. Ethan cleared his throat, pulling her from her thoughts. "I don't tell many people about Lily." Emily studied him. "Why did you tell me?" His lips pressed together for a moment before he spoke. "Because I know what it's like to watch someone suffer and feel powerless to stop it. And I think," he hesitated, "I think you're starting to give up." The words hit her harder than she expected. Emily had spent so long burying her disappointment that she hadn't realized how much it had shaped her. She looked away. "Maybe I am." Ethan leaned forward, resting his forearms on the desk. "Then let me make you a promise." She glanced back at him, wary. "I will not give up on you." His voice was firm, unwavering. "Not until I have answers." Emily felt something in her chest tighten. How many doctors had promised her help only to abandon her when things got complicated? How many times had she dared to hope only to be let down? And yet, something about Ethan felt different. She exhaled slowly. "What's next?" A small flicker of something, relief, crossed his face. "I want to run a series of tests. Some you've probably had before, but a few are more specialized. I think we might be looking at something other doctors have overlooked." She swallowed. "And if you're wrong?" Ethan held her gaze. "Then we keep looking." The certainty in his voice made her want to believe him. A knock on the door interrupted them. A nurse poked her head in. "Dr. Wallace, we have the imaging room ready whenever you are." Ethan nodded before turning back to Emily. "Are you up for it?" She hesitated, her fingers curling into the fabric of her sweater. This was the moment. She could walk away, accept that this was just another doctor, another dead end. Or she could take a chance. Emily inhaled deeply, then stood. "Yeah," she said, her voice steadier than she expected. "Let's do this." Ethan gave her a small nod, standing as well. Good. For the first time in years, she wasn't walking into another round of tests alone. This time, someone was walking beside her. The hallway leading to the imaging room was quiet, the soft hum of medical equipment filling the space. Emily walked beside Ethan, her heart pounding in a rhythm she couldn't control. She had done this before, so many times before. The cold machines, the indifferent technicians, the sterile lights glaring down at her as she lay still, waiting for answers that never came. But this time, something was different. Ethan had promised not to give up, and for some reason, she believed him. A nurse guided her into the room, explaining the procedure in a gentle voice. The MRI machine loomed ahead, its presence both familiar and daunting. Emily hesitated. Her body had betrayed her so many times before, failed her, abandoned her, left her drowning in pain without reason. What if this was another dead end? Sensing her hesitation, Ethan stepped closer. "Emily," he said, his voice steady, grounding. She looked at him. "I know you're scared." He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't dismiss her fear. He acknowledged it. Her throat tightened. "But this time," he continued, "you're not doing this alone." Something inside her cracked. She gave a small nod and let the nurse guide her to the machine. As she lay down, staring up at the blank ceiling, she focused on Ethan's words. This time, she wasn't alone. The machine whirred to life, and as the scan began, for the first time in years, a tiny thread of hope wove itself into the fabric of her thoughts. Maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. The crisp autumn air hit Emily's skin as she stepped out of the clinic, her arms instinctively wrapping around herself. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden hue over the city. Everything felt strangely different. She had been here before, walking out of a doctor's office, waiting for results, balancing on the thin line between hope and disappointment. But today, for the first time, she wasn't carrying the weight alone. Ethan had been clear. The tests would take a few days to process. There were still uncertainties, still no guarantees. And yet, something inside her had shifted. As she reached the sidewalk, she pulled out her phone, her finger hovering over Sarah's contact. Her sister would want to know how it went. She would hear the difference in her voice. Before she could call, the clinic door opened behind her. "Emily!" She turned to see Ethan standing just outside, his hands in the pockets of his coat. He looked at her with the same steady expression he'd had since the moment they met. Calm, focused, like he had already decided this was just the beginning. "I'll be in touch as soon as I have the results," he said. Emily nodded, searching his face for any hint of doubt. She found none. "Okay," she exhaled. "Thank you." Ethan gave a slight nod. "We'll figure this out." A part of her wanted to ask, "What if we don't?" But for once, she didn't. Because maybe, just maybe, this time, she believed him. As she turned and walked down the street, the wind lifted a strand of her hair, carrying it behind her. For the first time in years, she wasn't walking away from another disappointment. She was walking towards something new, something that felt a lot like hope. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more emotional and inspiring stories. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let me know what part of the story resonated with you the most. Did you relate to Emily's journey? What would you do in her place? Your support means the world. See you in the next story.